I would like to dedicate this podcast to my father, Maurice, who passed away 1 year ago today. My father had some amazing qualities as a human that he gave to me, and one of them was curiosity. He taught me how to be so curious, and his curiosity was contagious, and he was really talented at connecting with others with his curiosity. So I am so grateful for that. He also taught me that it was okay to be different. And not only that it was okay to be different, but he kind of felt like, why would you want to be the same as everybody else? So I loved this man. And we also had a lot of complicated ways of connecting and relating to one another throughout life. He was very difficult in so many ways, and that is not his fault. He grew up with parents that went through a horrific experience of losing every relative they had in the Holocaust. And it's no wonder that my father grew up with so much fear. He was afraid of flying. He was afraid of just really anything that put him out there on the edge. But he was not afraid to connect to other people. So I'm starting this podcast today on the anniversary of his death, the 1-year anniversary of his death. And this podcast would not have ever come to fruition had he not inspired me to live a life of unboxing myself from all of the boxes that he tried to put me in. So I love you, Dad. This is for you. And now, welcome to the Unbox Yourself podcast. Thanks for being here.
From day one, we are told who we should be, how to live, and what's acceptable. Before we even have a chance to discover ourselves, our society has already drawn those lines for us. But what happens when those lines are keeping us from knowing and embracing who we truly are? Welcome to Unbox Yourself with Samantha Fox, a podcast about unpacking and unlearning everything that's kept you from living as your true self. Through honest conversations about your internal emotional landscape, sexuality, coming out later in life, relationships, and the journey to self-acceptance, we break free from the boxes we never chose.
Here it is, the first episode or the first recording of a podcast that has been part of my imagination for a very long time. Welcome to Unbox Yourself with Samantha Fox. I'm so excited to have you here. I am here because I have an intention, and that intention is to work with others to help them unbox themselves from anything that they are feeling stuck in, meaning society has an idea of how it's supposed to be, right? So let's just say here I am on this podcast. Society has this idea of how this is supposed to be, how this podcast is supposed to be released and how I should sound and how I should do it. And I am releasing myself to get unstuck so that I can put this content, this important content out into the world and help you out there also get unstuck and move past what society expects of you and just be authentically who you are. That is what I am doing. I am here because I have lived a life of really constant unboxing, initial confusion, right? Why do people get married? Why is my mother staying married to my father? Why Are there all these things that I'm supposed to do, but I have no desire to do them? Why does everybody seem to be just living in this conveyor belt way that is so friggin' boring? And I don't want to do that, but I also don't know how to not do that, because if I don't do that, I will disappoint really my father. I mean, that was really the main thing for me. I don't think I would have disappointed my mother, really, no matter what I had done. But my father had really high expectations of me, and I felt the pressure of his boxes that he laid out for me. And there was a lot of confusion along the road. I want to talk to you out there, those of you that are feeling like you just can't get past this idea of what you're supposed to do and should do, and you feel extremely guilty about being just who you are because society has told you that that's selfish. I want to hear from you. I want to help you lessen the hold of that box on you and free you to be your beautiful self. I have a feeling at this point in time in the world that we are living in that I want people's stories to go far and wide. So by helping one person who comes on this show and takes that courageous, brave step in sharing with me what is happening with them and what they are struggling with, and being able to have that real, raw conversation with them, that there will be a ripple effect. If not one other person in the world that feels that way, maybe 5 or 10 or maybe even 100. And that is how I can create some kind of change from this one human life that I have lived and worked so hard to free myself from the expectations of society and just give myself the grace of being the highly imperfect person that I am. Quirky and all. I accept myself and I don't live in the expectations of what society says that I need to be. Today, I want to share a little bit about my early experiences being here on this earth in a family, growing up in a upper middle class family in New York. My father was a doctor. My mother had her own business that she fought my father for 6 years for the right for him to allow her to go into her own business, because my father wanted my mother to stay home, to cook, take care of the house, and take care of me. And my brother, I have a half brother who was my mother's child from her first marriage. She got divorced and she married my father when my brother was about 1, and then they had me a few years later. My father also was married before he married my mother and got divorced, did not have any children. So they came together, the two of them, in a second marriage with one child. So it was somewhat of a blended family in that I was the child of my parents and my brother was the child of my mother. And I grew up in a family that was extremely traditional in so many ways. Like I said, my father wanted my mother to stay home and raise the kids and be at the house and be there when he got home from work with dinner waiting on the table. My mother had no interest in being a stay-at-home mother. She really just did not. She had always worked from the age of 10. Her own father died when she was 10 years old and he was 35 years old. He was a Turkish immigrant, musician, and he died a very early death. And my mother started working to help support her family at the age of 10. So to be in a situation, in a family where she was told not to work was very uncomfortable for her. She fought my father. She worked. She had her own businesses my whole life. She brought me to work with her on the weekends. And my father worked about 6 days a week. And growing up in my house, there was a lot of tension, which for me created a lot of confusion. And some of the things I was confused about were Why are these two people together? Why are all of these families together, around in my neighborhood, kind of going to different homes and just trying to make sense of this structure that people live in where they marry each other and have families. I did not understand why people would want to do that. And especially because although my parents did laugh, they did have really great sense of humors. And my father was a very curious man. He liked to really get to know people. So if I brought friends over or if we had even workers at the house, he wanted to invite them to a meal. He wanted to know all about their family, all about their history. He was endlessly curious. And I think I probably got that from him. But he also had a lot of expectations of my mother and really of me also, that he would be taken care of as if he were king. So when he came home and that garage door opened, everybody kind of just jumped into their role and dinner had to be on the table. And if it wasn't, there was a scene. And if there were condiments that were not left on the table, there would be a possible fight outbreak, which I could never understand. Why can't this able-bodied man get up from the table and grab whatever it is that he needs to grab? Why does my mother, who was out working all day and who had to come home and cook a meal, why is she the one that then has to get up from the table to get him the condiments? I just couldn't understand this. This made no sense to me. So I really started questioning things very early and trying to understand marriage and gender roles, and none of it was appealing to me. As I got into adolescence and my teenage years, I had friends who would talk about their wedding dress and what they want their wedding dress to look like and what kind of food they're going to have at their wedding. And again, all of this just went right over my head. And by the time I got to college and was graduating college, I had a lot of friends that were either going directly into the workforce or they were going directly into graduate school. And again, it was this feeling of, I don't really understand why everybody has to do the same thing and why everybody's on this conveyor belt where you just hop on and you get the stamps of approval and you do all the things that society tells you you're meant to do and supposed to do. Those felt extremely uncomfortable for me. And so when my friends were either starting work or going to graduate school, I actually left the country. And I went and I lived in Europe for 3 years. And looking back on it, I think this was just my way of fighting what was expected of me. It was very clear from the earliest time I could remember. My father expected me to be a doctor and to take over his practice. And science and math were always valued much more highly by him than any of the other subjects at school, to the point where if I was struggling, he would get me a tutor in those topics because I was going to be a doctor. I was going to go pre-med. I was going to take over his practice. Nobody checked in with me to ask if that's what I wanted to do. If I had any desire to be a doctor, I was just told this is what I was going to be. And in fact, I did go pre-med for the first 2 years. I was in college. And then finally just told my father, I just can't do this. This is so not me. Nothing about this is exciting to me. I don't like it. I'm not going to do it. And I switched to psychology. And that was really the first time I would say that I very outwardly disappointed my father. Fast forward, I believe I left and went and lived in Europe to just get out of this kind of like rat race or conveyor belt life that I just didn't understand. I had such a free spirit. I had so much energy and so much curiosity about the world. And I just wanted to be free. I did not want to have to buckle into this life and put myself into this box that everybody else was, looking forward to. So I did go live in Europe for a couple of years. And I finally had my fill as I was coming to about the age of 24 and came back to the States. And at that point, it was kind of the feeling I had was like, okay, I can't keep fighting this tide And I'm going to just need to kind of give myself over and do what society expects of me. And I did end up getting married at the age of 26 and getting pregnant right away. At the age of 27, I had twins. And then I had another child at the age of 30. And by 32, I realized I was so gay.
Are you thinking maybe I should contact Samantha so I can come on the podcast and have a conversation with her about what is going on with me? If so, go to unboxyoursexuality.com and apply to be a guest on this podcast, and we can talk about whatever it is that is keeping you stuck in the box and unable to live your authenticity. Join me.
So that started another layer, or let's say many layers, of unboxing myself, right? How had I lived all these years and not known that I was gay? So this was the hugest disappointment to my father and to my husband and to mankind that I did not want to be with a man. I had to really fortify my strength and belief that I was just doing the right thing for myself and it's what I needed to do to survive. And there wasn't really any question for me as to whether or not I could stay. I knew I could not stay in the marriage. And at the age of 32, with 3 kids under 5, I came out as gay. I had a partner. I went through a litigious divorce for 3 years, and then I landed basically in a separate home where I had a certain number of years to get on my feet and start making money to be able to fully support myself and my children in my home. And that is my journey in as short of a nutshell as I can possibly express it. There are a lot of details. There is a lot of learning, a lot of lessons that came from all of that. And then from 32 up until today, I'm 56 today, I have learned so much by being in relationship with women, by being queer, and just through doing this work that I've been doing, which is really being a healer and working with couples and individuals as a therapist and as a sexuality coach. I will be popping in every now and again to share pieces of my story and also just curiosities that I have, because I still find myself bewildered, I would say, by some of the ways that people keep themselves in their boxes for fear, right? There's a lot of fear of uncertainty, which is understandable and valid. But I do find myself bewildered at people's ability to stay in their boxes and deny their truth because of fear. And I hear all kinds of stories. I sometimes will like to pop on because I like to have places to discuss these things. And in the past, I would call a friend and say, oh my gosh, like I'm just trying to figure out, how can this be? But I'm going to use this space to do that. I had wished in those days that I had a podcast that I could pop on and just be like, I'm really curious about this. So now I can. You will hear from me. You will hear my curiosities. You will hear little snippets of discoveries of my own, of my journey, things that I'm realizing as I am going through my own journey. And in the last year, I've been going through the beginning of my own spiritual journey. I lost my father a year ago. On March 7th, 2024, my father passed away. I lost my mother back in 2010. And the loss of my second parent and the loss of my father, who was such a reactionary figure for me. I reacted to him through my whole life. He taught me what misogyny was. And he taught me a little bit about, women that are martyrs. And I mean, my mother was not a martyr. She did a lot of self-care and she did not suffer to be worthy. She did not suffer in order to gain worthiness. She had her own self-worth, and she was a beautiful model for me. But my father taught me about homophobia and, heteronormativity and societal expectations and compulsory heterosexuality and really, and misogyny, just all of the things. He taught me so many things. And a year ago, he departed this earth. And that really set me off on a journey that I would say is my spiritual journey. I've had so many years of evolving in my human journey, but my spiritual journey really started when my father passed last year. And so I will be sharing tidbits about what I'm learning in my spiritual journey and also share gems from my human journey. And then I want to hear from you, and I want to work with those of you out there that are still feeling stuck, are hiding, and you're feeling guilt and you're feeling shame, or you just can't allow yourself to feel pleasure. It feels too dangerous and scary or shameful. I want to hear from you. I want to work with you. I want to support you. And I am hoping that that support and love gets rippled out into the world sort of as a vibration that we can heal. We can do this work. We don't need to live in the boxes that our hetero-patriarchal system said we have to live inside of. We don't have to. We have a choice. We have agency as adults, right? Kids don't. We're dependent and we need to survive, and we are dependent on our parents to get there. But once you are out of that and you are dependent upon yourself, you have agency and you have choices. And I am here to help you unbox and unpack and unlearn whatever it is that is keeping you stuck. So thank you for being here. I love that you're here. Thank you for supporting me. And I look forward to sharing all of my magic with all of you.
Thank you for spending this time with me on Unbox Yourself with Samantha Fox. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps more folks find these conversations. If you're ready to unbox from something that's keeping you stuck, I would love to support you. You can find the application to the show at unboxyoursexuality.com. Let's stay connected. Find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Lesbian Curiosity Coach. Give me a follow and join the conversation. Remember, we only have this one time through. Why not unbox yourself and let your true self shine in all its beautiful glory?